For years, you've known me as AC. What a lot of you don't know is that's not how my friends know me. I invite you to a different look at someone you've gotten to know as a podcast personality. Through that, I hope you'll get to see the person my friends know. The one they call Tony. So, yeah. Yesterday really wasn't the easiest one for me. I really had no indication that that's the way it was going to go. In fact, in the week leading up to yesterday, it felt like everything was on track to be kind of an awesome day. As I'm recording this, it's Wednesday afternoon. Tuesday mornings is normally when Jason and I sit down to record the In the Blood podcast. I enjoy that for a couple of reasons. One is, it's probably the most amount of time during the week where I get to sit down with Jay and hash things out just as friends. The other thing is that I really do enjoy recording and collaborating, talking about what we're going to talk about, even for In the Blood. It just, I don't know, it's a rewarding part of my week. I look forward to it very, very much. And usually it's got a bit of therapeutic value wrapped up in it too, which is all good stuff, right? And before I get too much farther in, I want to apologize. This is going to sound a little bit all over the place, but bear with me. Like, it is going somewhere. I'm not losing my mind entirely. So Tuesdays are, unique days in the week for a couple of reasons normally, because, first of all, like I've already said, it's when Jay and I sit down to deal with In the Blood stuff. But usually what happens is after he and I get off of Zoom, then I've got about an hour break to throw some food down the old grocery hole, relax a little bit before I start my weekly therapy session with my therapist, John. Now, what was different yesterday was that the previous Tuesday when I had my therapy session with John, we had kind of it was a difficult session. And I think I talked to you guys a little bit about it after the session before that, when he'd given me some homework that I wasn't really sure what to do with. Well, anyways, I did the homework. We talked about the homework that I had done, and then he had given me some even more difficult homework. And he's like, okay, so do you want to work on that? Which, just so you know, he wanted me to write a letter to my estranged mother. Not necessarily a letter I was going to send, but just a letter letting my raw feelings out on paper. And I thought, well, if I'm going to have to dig that deep into one of the most painful areas of my life, I'm going to need a little bit more than a week to psych myself up to write this letter. And I'm probably going to need a little bit of time to wind down after writing this letter. So I wasn't sure that I could deal with this whole turnaround, this whole emotional cycle of dealing with the homework in 7 short days. So what I said to John, the therapist, was, instead of the normal weekly appointment, can we make the next appointment for 2 weeks from now? Thinking that this letter to my mom was going to be the worst thing I was going to have to deal with. So anyways, without getting into the nitty gritty of what specifically this letter contained, suffice it to say, it was emotional, but at the same time, it didn't leave me feeling like I needed a lengthy recovery period afterwards. If anything, it was like, okay, that actually felt good to purge some of these things that I haven't actually been, I don't want to say dishonest about, but I haven't expressed myself without limitations. Because normally when I'm talking about stuff to do with complicated relationships, yeah, I'm telling the truth, but I can't always tell the whole truth, because if I was going to do that on a podcast, then invariably I'd be violating somebody's confidence. I'd be maybe causing somebody else some shame or embarrassment, and that's not something I want to do. So I do have to hold myself back. So while it is therapeutic to talk on some level, it doesn't really empty the tank. You know what I mean? But writing this letter emptied the tank. I'm like, okay, I feel actually kind of great. And before Jay and I sat down yesterday morning to start recording, I was thinking, man, I really wish I kind of like hadn't canceled today's appointment with John, because I feel like I was actually ready for it, and we could have moved on to whatever the next thing was. And so I was sitting there just sort of having this thought bouncing around in my head. Meanwhile, I've got the Zoom meeting started. I'm waiting for Jason to join. As it happened, I ended up waiting a little bit longer than I would have liked, because I don't know what was happening on Jay's end, but it sometimes takes them a little bit. It's not like we've got a hard schedule. It just, we've got a rough time that we lay out. But the way my mind works is, if we say it's going to be approximately, say, 11 a.m., if it's 11 a.m. plus 5 seconds and I haven't seen the alert that he's in the waiting room, I start getting agitated already. Where, like, by any reasonable standard, if you're even, like, you say like around 11, I think most people think, anytime from 10 minutes before 11 to maybe, the better part of 11:45. Like, who cares? It's approximate, right? But while I'm sitting there waiting for him to log in, my phone starts to ring, which on a Tuesday morning for me is kind of weird, because most of my phone calls start happening afternoon. And I looked at the call display and I didn't recognize who the number was. Like, it wasn't in my contacts, but I could tell from the area code that it was a local number. So I thought, okay, well, if it's a scammer, at least it's a local scammer. I'll be talking to somebody local and friendly. I can live with that. So I answered the phone. I'm like, hello. And this voice on the other end is basically trying to confirm that they're speaking to the appropriate person. And I said, yes, you are. And she said, oh, my name is Mrs. So-and-so. I'm a teacher at your younger son's high school. And I'm thinking, well, this is an odd time to be phoning from the school, because, here in Calgary, where I live, the last day of classes has already happened, right? My son had gone in a few days prior to write, I think, the last exam he had to write was his final exam for biology, which he had done. And so far as I knew, he felt like he'd done kind of okay with it. So anyways, the teacher phones, the bio teacher, and she confirms that, yes, in fact, he did okay with the final exam, but that she still had concerns about how, even factoring in the decent grade on the final exam, what his overall final mark was going to be. And going into grade 12 for the career path that he's got chosen for post-secondary, she wasn't convinced that this grade was going to be adequate to get him where he wanted to go, right? And through the course of this conversation, again, I keep saying long story short, but there's nothing about this story that's short. Nothing with me ever is, right? She said, like, his reason for not doing so great in her class really had very little to do with his capacity to understand or his work ethic or anything like that. It really came down to, like, just straight up attendance. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the kid's in high school. I expect that he's going to cut class once in a while. Like, not a big deal. We all cut class in high school. What I wasn't expecting to hear, like, was for the last semester, and I'm not talking from September, I'm talking like the last few months, he missed her class 22 times, and that's why his grade kind of wasn't that good. And so now I'm not, like, a little bit concerned for his career path. Now I'm just, like, pissed right off, because I'm thinking, okay, you're smart enough, you're hardworking enough, but, like, if you don't actually show up to get the thing done, you're not going to get the thing done. That's one of the, like, unavoidable realities, is you have to be there. Either in body or in spirit, like through an online connection or whatever, right? But this little dink just took it upon himself to just not show up whatsoever. And in doing so, I started freaking out, because I'm thinking, okay, like, he's graduating next year, and then he's off to post-secondary, and he's off to adulthood, and I feel like this kid is screwing himself, right? And instead of taking a few minutes to digest like I normally do, I'm thinking, okay, Jay's about to log into Zoom. I can't sit down and record and be calm and offer my, in the blood style AC Bergenfischer presented thoughts when I've got this agitation boiling in my gut. So I decide, okay, I'm going to take advantage of the 15 to 20 minutes I've got, presumably until Jay finishes whatever he's doing on his end and logs into Zoom. And I go and knock on the kid's bedroom door. I'm like, look, dude, we got to talk. Few problems with that. I mean, one is I didn't, like I say, like, admittedly, I didn't take the time to organize my thoughts or whatever and figure out how I was going to talk about this. The other one is I came in kind of hot-headed, which is not the way to address anybody. Doesn't matter if they're your kid or somebody else. Just like, don't come in hot. It's stupid and it's not productive. I didn't consider that, okay, it's summer break now officially, and this kid, while he normally would be awake at this time of day, he's likely sleeping because he's been up all night gaming and he's not planning to be awake for the next couple of hours. So basically, I'm dealing with a kid who's barely awake, has no idea what's going on. I'm coming in hot. I haven't established any context for where I'm coming from. I haven't done a good job of describing my thoughts. Any of this, I just come and start dumping on him in probably disjointed sentences, telling him about like how I'm really upset with him because, you know, basically like he's effed over his whole future by just deciding to have garbage attendance, here too long, there too short. Basically, like, I'm annoyed because you don't show up for your academic courses, but you show up for your extracurricular ones. And this is where things got really, really out of hand, I think, because one of the reasons why I have determined myself to calm down before talking to my kid is that I have a tendency that when I don't take that time to think about what it is I'm trying to communicate, I'll go straight to trying to impose a meaningful consequence. And I tend to go a little bit too heavy-handed with the consequence. And I don't mean like physically speaking. I mean, anybody who knows me knows that like, my biggest problem as a parent is that I'm not, I don't want to say aggressive, but I mean, everybody accuses me of being way too soft on the kid because I want him to have the freedom to, I don't know, develop the experience to make meaningful choices moving forward. I don't want to baby him, especially at 17 years old. I mean, like he should be able to make some decisions, right? But anyways, like this one particular field of extracurricular activities really ties into what he wants to do as a career. And so he's really been taking this stuff seriously. He's been getting good grades in these classes. He's been excelling in the extracurricular programs. But the problem is, in order to qualify for post-secondary, he's also going to make sure that his academic courses are successfully completed. And I thought, well, if you're going to screw yourself out of your chosen career path by ignoring your academics, it makes sense to me that if you can't do this thing you want to do anyways, you are going to have to deal with the academics. You have to graduate high school. You're going to have to do something. And I've given you all this space to do the things you want to do. And you've instead used this time and this space to, you know, take advantage of my trust. So I told him, like, grade 12, it's all academics. I don't give a crap about your extracurricular stuff. Don't get mad at me. You effed yourself over, and there's that. And I'm seeing this like 6+ foot tall, 17-year-old young man looking at me, fighting back the tears. And like, I knew in that moment I'd gone too far, but at the same time, I'm still pissed off and I'm not really thinking too clearly. And then I'm like watching the clock ticking. I was like, I got to go sit down and wait for Jay to log into Zoom. So, I mean, I get in front of the computer. Jay's logged into Zoom. We were having some technical difficulties. We went a few rounds to get that resolved. Then we decided to take like a short break, like a 5-minute break or whatever, to do things, each of us on our own end with our physical setups. During that time where we're both logged out of Zoom, I texted my second wife, you know, like my relationship history is a little bit complicated. I don't want to just say my ex because that could mean a number of different people, but basically my kid's mom, who doesn't live in Canada. She doesn't live in Calgary. She lives somewhere in the eastern United States or whatever. So I texted her to say, look, I gave the kid like a couple of options. One was that he could stay here with me and not have any extracurricular activities. The other one was he could try his luck with you. And option 3 was he could talk to the guidance counselor and see if there is some option that is eluding me that would allow him to continue living and going to school here while leaving his other programs intact. Anyways, that set off a series of events, which ended up with me having this massive argument. And I don't want to say just argument. It was a harsh exchange of words where both of us took some unnecessary low blows against each other via text message. And I was upset to the point where I was physically shaking. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, why did I cancel my therapy appointment for this afternoon? Because now it's like 2 heavy blows. Like, I am like way off the freaking rails. I need my therapist, but that's no longer an option on this short notice. So we log back into Zoom. Jay can tell like there's something wrong with me. He ends up talking me down off my ledge. I get calm to the point where like I'm not shaking. I'm able to get into that mindset more or less that I need to be in to record in the blood. And, after that, I sat down with the kid and I had a long conversation with him. I apologized for coming in hot. I apologized for not taking the time to choose my words, establish context. I like to own up. If I've made a mistake with my kid, with anybody, I want to own up to it, and I want to see what, if anything, I can do to make it right. So we ended up having a good talk. We got things sorted. I also sent a couple of texts to his mom, basically telling her, look, I don't want to fight with you. I said some things maybe I shouldn't have said, just tried to make things right with her. I think I caught her at a good time because I guess she had done some thinking. She had some ways in which she wanted to reciprocate those acknowledgments, those apologies, which is cool. So where we left things was more or less fine. But I'm still dealing with the emotional hangover of this exchange with her and this exchange with his teacher and the exchange with the kid, all these things which were unwanted and unexpected parts of my Tuesday morning. Tuesday afternoon comes and my most recent ex, the physically and psychologically abusive one who, we broke up a few months back and she moved out, and that's honestly been fine. I wasn't sure how well I was going to deal with that, but it turns out I'm dealing quite well with her absence. What I wasn't expecting is because I thought that I had her thoroughly blocked on every platform, was to get an out of the blue text message from her saying, hey, how are things going these days? And my first thought when I saw her name on the call display was like, me, like today of all days, like really? And I wasn't interested in fighting with her, but like, even with the minimal amount of exchange we had, like I didn't want to just out and out tell her to like off, because she had one box that was still left in storage in our shed, and it's like, what, if she comes and picks up this one box, I don't have to see her anymore. I can just be done, right? This is my reasoning. But still, like, my anxiety climbed up like so high. And I was right back to that psychological space, like where I was at when she was here, causing me the nonstop stress with the lies of the drugs and the addiction and the abuse. And I just wasn't sure what to do. It was just like that one thing too many. It's like the day ended on a seriously low note. Like I was planning on sitting down and recording something completely different for this show. I was so upset. It's like, I don't want to like sit down and just be complaining about how hard life is for me. And I realized sometime today that, you know what? The whole idea of this is just to give you guys an unscripted look at like what the hell's going on inside my head. And if part of that is me rambling about like how effed up I am psychologically, well, then some episodes are just going to be that. And I hope that's not what's coming across, but if it is, well, I mean, that's the real me. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. But I guess the way things ended with that exchange with my ex is like, whereas before I thought she was blocked, I made double, triple, quadruple sure that she was very, very blocked from calling or texting me anymore. And in doing that, I don't know. I can't say like I calmed right down, but a bit of calm started creeping back into the situation. And this day, which I felt like it had been wall to wall drama and stress and unwanted feelings, kind of pointed in a more positive direction, which is fine. You know, I mean, I think that's, at the end of the day, I don't know. I was tempted to say, like, at the end of the day, like, I just want to feel okay all the time or most of the time. But the reality is, as much as I hate having days like I had yesterday, in a way, I kind of don't hate them, because after having like just a downright up day yesterday, today, nothing at all happened. Without the context of yesterday, today might have been overwhelming in how boring it was. It might have actually been a disappointment of a day, because there was just nothing going on. The phone didn't ring. I didn't get any text messages, emails. There was no problems to solve. My kid was on top of like making supper for tonight. Like there was nothing for me to do. Nothing to do except for, you know, potentially at the end of the day, at some point, sitting down to have this conversation. But like after yesterday, man, today felt so awesome. It didn't feel boring. It didn't feel like it needed some extra spice. It just felt like a welcome refuge from what I know life is capable of throwing at me. You know, like these stormy waters, I really don't like being in the midst of them. But at the same time, when you end up like in those, when the seas kind of smooth out and the sun breaks through the clouds, and it just like, okay, maybe there's nothing exciting going on. Maybe it's wind still. Maybe I'm just sitting here looking around. It feels like such an accomplishment to get to that point of sitting on calm seas, even if you're going nowhere. Anyways, I hope that you were able to follow along with what I was saying, and I hope that, you know, whatever I had to share had some value for you. As usual, if you've got thoughts on this or anything I've talked about on this podcast or any other one for that matter, please feel free to reach out, send me an email. Like, I don't know, tell me your story. It doesn't have to be shared here. I mean, we're in it together, right? The email is callmetonypod@yahoo.com. And yeah, I don't know. Like, well, I guess I'll talk to you next week, maybe sooner. I don't know. I might actually ramp up the frequency of these things. It seems to be good for me. I mean, I feel a lot better at the end of this conversation than I did at the beginning. So anyways, I'm going to shut up now. Have a good week, guys, and I will talk to you later. Bye.